You're wasting your time again. Why can't you learn from your sister? I set down my coffee cup, my fingers trembling slightly, but my gaze didn't flinch. Mother stood beside me, her smile sharp as a blade. Emma lounged on the sofa, hair disheveled, eyes full of disdain. After years of being ignored, compared, and ridiculed, I finally understood. My effort and patience were nothing but their entitlement. So I started leaving, started building my independence, started letting them taste what life without me would be like. Sure enough, a few months later, my parents panicked like headless chickens, and Emma faced problems she couldn't solve for the first time, utterly helpless. I guided her calmly but didn't intervene directly. On the other end of the phone, their voices trembled, their words desperate. They finally realized that I, who had been ignored for years, was not a disposable shadow but an indispensable presence. I smiled and hung up. Sunlight poured into my new apartment, and I knew, revenge is never about shouting or blaming, but about living calmly and letting malice and bias ultimately backfire on themselves. I remember in high school, I was always a steady student, keeping a low profile and avoiding trouble. My parents liked to say, "You're fine just being reliable. You don't need to be flashy like Jake, or flamboyant like Emma." So I studied, worked part-time, and did household chores, becoming the dependable one in the family. In college, I supported myself entirely through part-time jobs and scholarships. Late nights at the supermarket stocking shelves, taking orders at cafes, tutoring students, I constantly reminded myself, I have to prove I don't rely on anyone. Meanwhile, Emma lived freely under our parents' support. I restrained my resentment but always felt that one day, her world wouldn't illuminate mine. Still, I quietly persisted. I remember coming home from a night shift, hands full of groceries. Mother suddenly remarked, "Why did you buy all this? Emma needs the new paintbrushes, you don't understand." I stood in the doorway, exhausted, the bags weighing me down like burdens, but all I could do was nod and reply softly, "Okay." Emma smirked beside me, a victorious little smile. I felt humiliated, with nowhere to voice it. Another time, on my birthday, I had saved money for months to buy a new notebook for my studies and work. When my parents found out, they said, "We have special plans, don't spend money yourself." I waited in anticipation, only to watch them buy the notebook I had painstakingly saved for and give it to Emma. She cheered as if she'd won the world, while I sat there, feeling a cold, helpless void. That moment made me realize that all my efforts and sense of responsibility were taken for granted in their eyes, and any desire for recognition or fairness I had was non-existent. I had been trained from childhood to be invisible, to put myself last. But that very experience honed my independence and ability to handle conflict calmly. I knew that if I wanted to be seen, I had to rely on myself. So I began planning, saving enough to move out, finding a space where I could breathe freely, building my own life system. I got a job, applied for an apartment, arranged the moving details, calculating every hour and every dollar. No one helped, no one interfered. I grew under pressure, quietly building my independence. During this process, I realized my potential for revenge. Not by directly hurting anyone, but by using reality in order to strike back, showing them that without me, they would be helpless. My life, my achievements, my calm and reason would become undeniable. I learned to replace anger with action, complaints with plans. The day I moved out, I packed the last box and left a note on my bed. "This is about my decisions and boundaries. It's not about gifts, it's about years of being ignored." I closed the door softly, stepping into the first day of my new life. At first, my parents didn't notice I had left. They were busy setting up Emma's art studio. Emma remained immersed in her world, completely unaware of my value. 3 days later, panic set in. No one was doing the laundry, paying bills, or preparing dinner. Phone calls and texts went from complaints to anger to helplessness. I didn't reply or answer, observing the changes unfold. Emma faced a real problem for the first time. Her design files were lost due to a computer malfunction, and she had no technical skills to fix it. My parents panicked like ants on a hot pan and had to call me for remote guidance. Calmly, I instructed over the phone, back it up first, then reinstall the software. I can guide you, but you have to follow through and solve it yourself. Emma was speechless. My voice was calm, firm, and unwavering. I knew this was the first time she realized convenience wasn't guaranteed, that the pampering she'd relied on now required effort. Meanwhile, my life flourished: promotions, completing my degree, a stable relationship. Each time I saw my parents flounder over Emma's problems, my sense of revenge surged quietly beneath the surface. A few months later, Emma tried to avoid responsibility. An unstable boyfriend caused family conflicts, and she immersed herself in nightlife, jeopardizing her health and studies. My parents were frantic, emotions unraveling. I kept my distance, checking in through Aunt Helen. Every call, I offered guidance methodically, ensuring they couldn't rely on me directly, yet had to acknowledge my indispensability. The day Emma was hospitalized for an overdose, I arrived but stood calmly at the door. Do you now realize what I've been doing all this time? I'm not a resource you can use at will. My parents wept, finally admitting their neglect and favoritism. Emma, weak and remorseful, whispered, I'm sorry, I didn't realize before. I didn't immediately forgive. I just let them feel the helplessness caused by losing me. My parents finally understood that a child who had been ignored and spoiled for years could never replace someone who had always been independent and rational. They tried to explain, beg me to stay, beg for forgiveness, but I maintained my boundaries. You need to show you truly see and respect me, not rely on me because of a crisis. In the months that followed, Emma entered a recovery program, and Marcus and I continued our lives. Every interaction I had with my family maintained calmness and a balance of power. Every word, every action, reminded them, I was no longer the middle child to be used. My life and accomplishments forced them to understand what losing me truly meant. On my 25th birthday, my parents handed me the notebook they had originally given to Emma, along with Emma's apology. I hope one day I can be as strong and independent as you. I took the gift with a faint smile, realizing it was more than a returned item. It was long-awaited recognition. I had taken control of my boundaries and let my parents and Emma feel the cost of losing me. I returned to my apartment. Marcus handed me a cake. Sunlight streamed through the windows. I knew clearly, revenge is not shouting or blaming, it's living calmly and powerfully, and the moment when justice is served often comes quietly, almost imperceptibly.